Welcome to How to Split a Toaster, a divorce podcast about saving your relationships from True Story FM. Today, tell your toaster to slow down.
Welcome. No, that's not the type of slowing down you meant, Pete. Welcome to the show, everyone. I'm Seth Nelson. As always, I'm here with my good friend, Pete Wright. Today, we're talking about the value of time. Specifically, what is the value of taking time to understand yourself before taking action on your relationship? To help us work through a 90-day plan to clear the decks and to take stock, we welcome our friend, Deborah Driggs, back to the show. Her experience with divorce, trauma, and recovery has fueled her across the career landscape, and she understands, with the best of them, the value of exploring oneself before making dramatic change. Deborah, welcome back to the toaster.
It's always nice to be asked back. You know, that made me feel really good. So thank you.
So I did not get married for the first time until I was in my early 30s, and people used to say to me all the time, "Well, do you get nervous on first dates?" And I'm like, no, I don't get nervous on first dates. I get nervous on second dates because I haven't had a lot of those, you know. So I didn't get asked back a lot.
Yeah, that's when you really have to put it into gear, right? Oh my God, we're going back again? We're going back in? All right.
So funny. It's like that whole thing, no matter how many people you date, there's always the milestone of you are now the longest person I've ever dated. Like this is the longest I've made it past every subsequent relationship. You've now succeeded. Now I don't know what to do. And so that leads us to our conversation today. Deb, we're excited to have you back because you actually brought this topic to us, and we just really resonated with it. It's this whole idea of just slowing down, and you have a 90-day kind of methodology, I guess, that you are thinking about. But our entire vibe is let's slow down before we tackle ourselves, before we tackle the world around us. Can you talk about where this came from for you?
Well, a lot of mistakes. You know, you start to figure things out when you make a lot of mistakes, and when you're sitting in that failure quite often. Like, okay, what is the solution here? What is really going on? And how the 90-day program started was I thought I remember just thinking, I'm so frustrated. I have to remove everything. Everything has to stop now. And at that time in my life, I kept doing other people's programs and other people's coaching and yoga retreats and this and that. And I thought, no, I'm going to do my own program. And so really what I did was I removed, it all started because I had a breakup. What I felt from that, and it was in around November 2020. And I knew that this relationship wasn't right. It wasn't like somebody left me. I really didn't want to be in the relationship, but all of a sudden I had this devastating feeling, and I thought, okay, it's not just the breakup. Like something's going on with me.
And have you had that feeling before when you broke up, the devastation?
Yes. And so I recognized this pattern because I thought, why do I get this way after a breakup?
Every time you're going through it, wash, rinse, repeat, shampoo, bottle instructions.
Here we go. The pattern's back. And so I thought, okay, I need to figure this out because now I'm on a mission of you know how we can solve other areas in our life? This was that one area that just kept repeating. And I thought...
Yeah, it's like locked in a box. It's the box that you drag around with you.
We're at the beginning.
It's almost like it's a set thing. Breakup, devastation, stay in bed, don't eat, cry. You know, it's like, well, who made those rules?
Wait a second. Wait a minute. That sounds like Pete's Saturday afternoon. So
yeah, I know. What are we doing judging? You come on the show and judge.
No, I didn't say it was a bad thing, Pete. I thought it sounded pretty good.
And I'm sure he's got his tub of Haagen-Dazs, Ben and Jerry's.
Right,
oh
exactly.
My God.
I was taught this by Hollywood, Deb. I was taught in order to break up, the cultural expectation is misery for a while and not exploration.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so now I find it all very fascinating because now that I've done this, my program that I created, what I realized through doing that was I needed to get back to me first. And just like you said, slow down. Let's just get through lunch and let's reevaluate what's really going on here. And so what I did was I removed everything. I took everything off the table that wasn't going to serve me or was going to be something outside of myself to try to fix how I felt.
All right. Give me some examples of that. Wait. What is
that?
Like what kind of stuff?
I did not travel for 6 months. I did not date for 6 months. I didn't do the sexting thing where the guy texts, "Hey, what's up?" And in the past, I would just always be like chiming in with that. And then I realized, no, that's not serving me. So that got removed. And by the way, during this process, I went through my entire phone. We're talking a lot of years. And I cleaned out every contact that wasn't adding value to my life, and I probably wasn't adding value to theirs. And I thought, why is this still in my contacts?
Oh my God, Deborah, if I did that, I would just have to do like delete all.
Yeah, well,
you collect the wrong contacts.
Guess what?
Man.
That's what happened. I started realizing, and I thought, what I did was kind of like how you clean out your closet. I went through my phone that way. It was like, have I talked to this person in 6 months? No.
Totally.
Delete.
Yeah.
And what's interesting, you guys, I just celebrated my 59th birthday 2 days ago.
Happy birthday.
It was really interesting because now when a text comes in and the contact's not there, I can just delete it and know that it's something that I removed, and I don't need that anymore in my life.
Yeah.
And so I got a lot of that on my birthday, and I thought that's interesting. That's a good time to try to reconnect with somebody, right? On their birthday or when an event happens. So I cleaned out my phone.
So you get a lot of just blank numbers, and you don't dive in and
not
respond.
Anymore.
You're not.
No, not since
anymore.
I did this program. No, because what I did is I cleaned out anybody that I knew it was a dead end, and it was kind of that fly by night relationship. It's like you're doing my energy.
Yeah, this is the 90-day emotional decluttering. Like this, what a good time to do this, right? Here it is. It's January. We're talking like we talk about decluttering our closets, decluttering the drawers, and giving away stuff in our house that doesn't serve us anymore. And this is the emotional decluttering.
You could not say it more perfectly. That's exactly what I do. So if you take travel and alcohol and sugar and sexting and dating and binging on Netflix and all of this, you remove it. I do it with my clients, I do it for 90 days. And they're like, what? Why? Mm-hmm. And I'm like, just try it. I did it for 90 days. And all of a sudden it was like somebody took this like film and it like, oh, I can see,
All right. So
it was like, whoa.
I'm fascinated now. I get all the things that you removed.
Imagine. Then I was like, well, why am I stopping? Let's keep going because more is going to be revealed. And so I did it for 6 months. I have to tell you, when I went back and started dating with these new set of glasses and this new freedom of like, I'm back to myself, and I felt it. I could feel the shift. And I'd sit on a date, and these poor guys had no chance because I was so, no, really. I mean, I'm just saying because you start to realize you're not really up for small talk anymore. And when you remove that negative stuff that's not serving, you take away everything that's affecting you from the neck up, right? I don't want to take anything on the outside that's going to change how I feel on the inside. And now you're really clear and you're seeing things differently. And now you're dating with that lens.
But what did you do? Like, you remove all this stuff. I mean, you just described my whole weekend, like binging and eating properly.
So basically what I did is I created this on 2 whiteboards. Okay. And on one whiteboard, here's what we're removing. And then on this whiteboard, I put everything we're doing for 90 days. So I did a consistent routine. It was the reason why I thought of this was because everybody was doing 75 hard. And I didn't
Wait, what's 75 hard? I
It
don't know
was
what
the
75
big
hard is.
craze 2 years ago where everybody was signing up and you'd get the app and it was 2 workouts a day, a gallon of water.
Oh, it's like a physical,
physical
thing, like a
thing.
physical
Yeah,
cleansing
and people
type.
were creating their own little, WhatsApp groups and Facebook groups.
Yeah, their own
Yeah.
little communities about it.
Accountability
75
groups and
hard.
things
And
like
so
that,
that's
yeah.
where this all started, because I started to do 75 hard. And I thought, well, what if I did this for an emotional cleanse? Forget the physical part of it, because I always seem to be doing other people's programs and I am physically, that was easy for me. What the hard part for me was doing the emotional cleanse. And that's when I woke up at 2 a.m. I was like, wait a second, because I was really riddled with all this like sadness and anxious feelings and like codependency and love addiction and like all these different things that were floating around in my head that I was obsessing about. I thought, what if I clean all that out?
I want to know. I want to know when you start to notice change in your life, because I imagine that it's like any time you're quitting something, right? Anytime you quit, you quit drinking coffee, you get headaches and the shakes for a little while. You quit sugar and you feel bad for a while. Like anytime you do any sort of cleanse, there is the darkness before the light of day. And I'm curious your experience of that when you start that process. How long before you realize that there is positive change ahead of you?
I would say the first mark was right around the 30-day, because you see things, you see things a little bit in the beginning, but here's the thing that I realized, because I had to really stick to it to make sure that I could really speak about it. And I will say this, it's probably one of the hardest things I've ever done, because it really, there was a lot of crying. There was a lot of, F this, I'm going to go to Cabo. Why am I doing this? I don't have to do this. Why am I doing this at this point in my life? I don't have to. I can do anything. I can go to Cabo. See, and that's this again. Here we go. I can do no, we're going to sit through these uncomfortable feelings. This is fascinating. All of a sudden, I want to put on and then I started writing like crazy. And so then...
Okay, that's really interesting. It like unblocks other pieces of you that get blocked up, right? Like who knows what that thing would be for other folks, but for you, you start writing.
I started writing a weekly blog. Now, you guys, I didn't know I was going to start coaching. I didn't know that I was going to write a book. I didn't know any of this before I did this. And I just wrote a weekly blog thinking, well, let's see if anybody reads it. Now I get emails weekly from my blog. And what I did was I thought, well, if I'm going to go through this program, why not write about what I'm going through? And I when I look back at my first blogs now, it's so funny because my writing style has changed. But in the beginning, I was so in this cleanse. I remember one of my first blogs was one called Running Shoes, because I was like, I just want to run. And all of a sudden it hit me. I've been a runner my whole life. When things get bad, let's move. Let's change relationships. Let's go on a trip. Let's change what's happening.
Seth Nelson, did you know that according to the National Institute of Alcohol Abuse and Alcoholism, 10% of children live with a parent with an alcohol use disorder?
Pete, I did know that. And as a family law professional, it's an alarming statistic every time I hear it. Yeah. And we just got through the holidays. We hope everyone came through that happy, healthy, and safe. We're in the new year, but we want to always make sure that kids are safe, whether it's the holidays, Christmas, New Year's, Thanksgiving, or a random Tuesday. And the way we do that is we work with Soberlink to make sure that parents have real-time independent third-party verification that you can make sure that kids are safe when they're with you or with your co-parent.
Okay, so how do they do that? What does Soberlink do? So Soberlink, it's a device. It looks like a breathalyzer, but it's a lot more than a breathalyzer. It is a device with facial recognition built into it. It is connected to your phone, but they also have a cellular model for those in North America who don't want to deal with phones and all the technology there. You blow into it and it registers your blood alcohol level and instantly sends it to those who need to know, co-parents, attorneys, those who need to be aware of your sobriety at any given time, particularly when you're about to drive with the kids.
And I hear you. People out there saying, Pete, she's always been accusing me of this, or he's always been saying this about me, and it's just not true. I get it. I litigate it all the time. But when you have he said, she said, courts typically come down on saying, I'm going to protect the kids. So take that argument out from the court system. Take it out from making a decision by a governmental employee called a judge. How do you do that? You get Soberlink, you blow into it 2 or 3 times a day, and you can show in real time that when you have the children, you have no alcohol in your system. So when you get to court 3 months, 6 months, whatever later, or mediation, that is no longer an issue because you have independent third-party verification that eliminates the he said, she said. It's going to save you money, time, and a whole lot of heartache and litigation.
And you know what the best part is? You get your kids. Blow into Soberlink, bing, bam, boom, you're a parenting hero. You can't go wrong. You can't go wrong. So sign up and receive $50 off of your Soberlink device. Just head over to soberlink.com/toaster. That's soberlink.com/toaster. And, save your relationship with your kids. Thanks to Soberlink for sponsoring this show.
So here's my question. Because you're listing off all these things that were certainly true for you that you wanted to change. How does one identify those aspects to which they should change? So, for example, you're saying, look, I was running from relationships, or I would go on trips, or is that different for your different clients? Do they have different things that they do to cope?
Of course.
And how do you identify those things that you need to change?
It's a great question. So I go through a list of questions. So I'll give you an example. I'm working with this girl right now. This is interesting because you see, you cannot, when you transmit off something different, people notice, right? They start to go, well, what is she doing? Because that's not the way I remember her. And so I had somebody from my past reach out to me, and she was in a frantic mode when she called me. And she's like, I know you're a life coach. I've been in this relationship for 7 years. It's been off and on, and all this chaos. And I just sat and listened. I didn't say one word. And then there was this silence. And I just asked her one thing. I said, are you coachable? She's like, what? I said, are you coachable? Because I do have a 90-day program, and just from what you just said for the last 10 minutes, because I didn't interrupt her, I just listened. And I said, just from what you said, this 90-day program will. She goes, well, I've done 90 days. I've done 30 days. Not to be rude, but it's not working. What we do is I think how to answer your question is, did we go down some sort of checklist? And basically, if you're suffering, if you're feeling this anxious obsession over something else or somebody else, then this is a program for you. Because when we start having that turmoil inside of ourselves about someone else, that's a very good sign to me that an emotional cleanse is due. Because all this stuff starts to stack, right? I got divorced in 2004. I've had a couple relationships, and every relationship since then, I've had that feeling after it ends of just abandonment, devastation, turmoil, waking up at 2 a.m. Like, it doesn't have to be that way.
Right. And you mentioned something very interesting, because we had JT, who is a physical fitness coach. And he does more than that. He does nutrition and healthy eating, not just to look better, but to be healthier. Mm-hmm. And on his questionnaire, it says 1 to 10, 10 being the most committed, 1 being the least committed. How committed are you to making this change? And then you answer that question. And then the very next statement is, if that answer was an 8 or higher, you can stop now. You're not ready.
Thank you. And so so when I do my 15-minute complimentary, I have people call me and tell me all the stuff, right? The story. I get this whole story. And I can see it right away. They can't see it. I can see it right away. Because when you're telling me this whole big story, I'm like, okay. And I ask the same thing. Are you coachable? And like, how badly do you want to make this change? Because if I don't listen, I take a 3-month commitment financially for a reason. Because most people want to drop out after 2 weeks, because when they start to get uncomfortable, they're like, yeah, I'll just go back to those old habits. And so I do the same thing. I'm like, I'm not for everybody, because you got to really stick through it.
There's a good point to that, because some people will actually focus more on the money than on the change. But when you make them kind of buck up. But my question is, if you're in a relationship and you kind of see this thing happening, right? You want to stay in this relationship, but you're having some issues, or you've had issues in the past. Does this require your partner to do it as well, or is it just a solo deal?
I would say solo deal to start.
I mean, isn't that the whole point? Like exploring yourself before you can do everything else.
You can't transmit anything you haven't got. And so we have to work on this first before we try to change. See, that's usually in relationships, you'll hear, well, he's doing this, she's doing this. And it's all about what the other person is doing, instead of, well, let me sit back and figure out what it is I'm doing.
You're in a relationship. It's not going well. Typically, people say, let's go to marriage counseling, let's go to counseling together. But what you're saying is you need to just work on yourself first. So I'm imagining a situation where someone says to their partner or spouse, things aren't going well, I'm going to go work on me for a while.
Yeah.
That's got to be pretty scary to that spouse hearing that, because they don't know what might change and they're not in the room. How do you deal with that? Or how does the person going through the change deal with that if they have a spouse that's not like, oh, well, let's go to counseling together. And they're like, no. I just need to work on me. Almost like it's not you, it's me. It almost sounds like the old breakup line from high school.
Right. No, and it's not. And this is the beautiful thing. So I do have, I have someone who's going through a divorce right now. And I said, well, before you really go the distance with this, do you want to try the 90 days and just see if maybe you get a different perspective? Because sometimes when we remove all these distractions and all these outside influences, and we can get really quiet with ourselves, the answer might be different. And so that's what I worry for her. And so she said, yeah, she was willing, because I said, it's never for a lack of love that people divorce. It's usually, and I have to say, I've been really fascinated by this, because now when I was just talking to a really close friend, we got divorced around the same time. And we were both saying how if we would have worked on ourselves at that time, because we have very similar stories, and that we probably would still be married, because as you get older, you realize that it's nonsense, these things that we.
Yeah.
So anyway, so to go back to that question, I think that it's a really beautiful thing if you can go to your partner and say, I'm feeling something and I'm not sure what it is. And if it's okay with you, I'd like to work on myself to find out what it is that's going on. I feel like I'm bringing that into this relationship, and I want to see if it is me and where I'm at in this relationship. Because I really want to be here to give. And I think when you bring something to the table that's of love and of giving, and and that's why a mentor and a coach is so imperative, really, because when somebody who's good, because if I said to this woman, hey, why don't you just go and let your partner know that there's a divorce on the table. I don't think he wanted it. And so I said, why don't you just say, I want to come from a loving place right now, but I am going through something. It could be
Yeah.
a midlife.
Deb, I gotta pivot. I have to pivot because I really want to bring that experience back to the law, because I feel like this is where, if you're listening to this and you're in a place where you think divorce might be on the table, how does this model potentially help? Like we talk often about Seth being, an attorney and counselor at law, right? And I feel like this is a chance to at least explore for people for a minute how you might benefit from slowing down before you start the process. Seth, I mean, does anything come up for that?
Oh, yeah. So it's a question I get a lot is, what's the difference between divorce and legal separation? And I say, well, listen, in Florida, check your local jurisdiction. Basically, there is no legal separation. So you're either married or you're not. And there's always a gray area in the law, which I'm not going to get into the nuance of this. But from the emotional divorce, it can play a huge impact. Now, what Deborah's talking about is going to your spouse before you say, look, I'm going to go talk to the lawyer. Or we've mentioned divorce a few times. Obviously, things aren't going well. I'm going to go work on myself.
Yeah.
But if you're having that open, honest, vulnerable conversation with your spouse, that's one thing. If you go work on that all by yourself and your spouse doesn't know, and you kind of be like, okay, I've done all this work. I realize this relationship doesn't work for me any longer, but I'm in a better place. I'm going to focus on myself. And then you mention divorce and then you hire the lawyer. You've gone through the grieving process. You're at acceptance now. You've done all the hard work and your spouse might not see it coming. It doesn't matter what you've told your spouse. It doesn't matter whether you say, I'm really going to file for divorce this time. And they will be shocked. And if they're one of the people that are shocked, you're going to think, how did they not see this coming? Where they just might not have seen it. It was in their blind spot. So the way it impacts on the law is that's one of those things where people are splitting up and they're at a different stage of the grief, which because they deal with the divorce differently. And sometimes that makes it harder, not easier, because they're in different places. Yes. So one person will be angry. So they're going to want to fight. Then they're going to want to negotiate and just bargain. I'll do anything to save the marriage, not to get rid of the divorce. Or I don't want to get divorced. I want you in my life. And the only thing keeping me connected with you right now is this divorce litigation. And as crazy as that
string it out as long as I can.
I'm going to just ride this wave until it is done. And
I think that's the thing. I think rationalizing these two things. One is being true to yourself and finding your authentic sort of whole, and doing so in a way that, to the point of our entire podcast, is targeted towards saving the most important relationships in your lives, if you still deem them worth saving. But doing so openly seems like you're doing a service to both parties.
Yeah. And how do you know? That's my question. That's where I come in.
Yeah.
How do you know?
Totally.
Is this true? The questions that I ask when women come and they go, he da 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 da, and they give me the whole story, and I go, how do you know? And then they stop, and they go, well, I'm not sure. And I go, that alone is reason to do the 90 days, because if you're not sure and you're just playing the guessing game, but there's still feelings, just go through this 90 days. Now, obviously.
And I have those, Deborah, I have those same conversations a little differently.
Okay.
They'll call me and they'll start telling me all about their spouse. And I'll say, what's your goal for this conversation? And then they'll tell me, well, I want to get divorced. I said, that's not going to happen in this conversation. What's your goal when we hang up the phone? I'm here to serve you. I'm specifically asking you, what kind of service do you want? What do you ask me to do for you right now? And then they'll say, well, I want some information, or how does the process work? And, I want to know about the kids, how that works. I say, okay. And I'll start going through some basic questions. How long you been married? Are there kids? How many? Ages? And then they'll start telling me about the spouse. Or I'll say, what kind of parenting plan and time sharing and custody visitations are you thinking about? Well, I want this, but he won't agree. I said, I'm not asking about him. It is really hard for people when they're initially talking to me and they're emotional to not talk about their spouse. I force it back to them, because I finally will tell them, I don't care what your spouse wants in this conversation. I care. I represent you.
Thank you.
I want to know what you want.
By the way,
it's a struggle.
And by the way, I bet you're just getting the short version of what I get, because because I'm the coach, I get the longest stories of.
Oh, Deborah, I get longer stories all day long, and then I'll tell them my rate. And if they want me just to listen, and this is what separates me from different lawyers, I will tell them, I'm not the warm and fuzzy lawyer.
Yeah.
If you're looking for that, there's another one that will sit back, put their feet up, crack a beer, and charge you a lot of money to listen to your story. But that doesn't help move your case forward.
It's so funny.
We have a way of communicating with our office that's going to save time and money on to get that important information when we need it.
Yeah.
But it's a balancing act because I have to build trust and rapport with the client, which you can't always do if you just cut them off.
Well, and here's what's really interesting. I've gotten to the point where I keep coming back to this example because I'm working with her right now, but she wants so desperately to tell me everything about this guy and, his habits and this and that. And I said, here's the deal. We can spend this 50 minutes talking about him, but I really want to talk about you, and I want to help you. I don't really care about him. And he really brought it at the end of the day. He has nothing to do with the conversation I want to have with you. He's just.
I would just devil's advocate that though, Deb. Like, what is if there is any sense in talking through all of the things that are running around in your head, might it be catharsis? Might it be I just have to vomit all this emotional stuff out before I can talk about myself? Is there any sense to that?
Maybe for the first call, you like. That's why I said for the first call, I just sit and listen. But then when I'm calling when we're having our call once a week, and the focus is going back to him, I have to rein it back in because it's not serving that person if they're just going to obsess about what he did. I'm like, we got to stick to your part in this. You chose it, you allow it, so let's go there.
Yeah, right.
And that's the same thing that judges will tell you. Judge Tibbles mentioned this when he was on the show, that lawyers, when they put on a case, will talk all bad about the other side, which doesn't give the judge a clear indication of what your client can do or has done for the marriage or for the children or the finances or the work or any of that. And the judges are looking for real people and real parents to come before them. And you're going to get a lot more mileage when you say, I've got 3 kids and they're different ages. And let me tell you, from 6 to 9 o'clock at night is hard. I'm picking up from extracurricular activities, getting them fed, getting them bathed, getting the homework done, trying to get them to put down their electronics. Like, be real about it and not say, oh my God, the bedtime routine is so nice. It's not. The 3-year-old and 4-year-old says, I want water 15 times.
Yeah.
Right?
I think that gets to one of those sort of perennial questions. Like if we're talking about, peeling back and finding your authentic self, also realizing that the complications of real life still exist, right? Like navigating through the hardship of the emotional decluttering that we're talking about is sometimes, I imagine, challenged by the fact that the 3-year-old and 4-year-old are still asking for water every night, and a constant reminder of the reality of the relationship that you're existing in.
I think that's spot on. But Deborah, my question is, when you're having guests or your clients work with you on their 90-day plan.
And, by the way, guys, do you know that every person that I'm working with, this is it? This is what I'm attracting. Yeah. I have all women clients right now, all women that are trying to get out of a relationship or get divorced or find a relationship.
And when they're doing that, but they have kids with that other spouse or the one they're trying to get a divorce from.
I don't have that situation. I don't have that situation.
You don't have that right now.
I have a woman that's been in this off and on relationship for 7 years, and she has her daughter from a previous marriage. Okay.
Gotcha.
So I have that. And then I have another woman who's going through a divorce, no kids. And I have another woman who is in her 30s that's desperately wanting to get married and keeps dating, as she puts it, assholes. They're all assholes. I go, well, they're not all assholes. Let's get through lunch. Bring it back.
Yeah, let's get through lunch. That's going to be the title of the episode. Just get through lunch.
Get through lunch.
Right? Just get through lunch with Deborah Driggs. Deborah, fantastic. Talk about the book. You're excited to have the book. You've got the book out. Let's talk about that journey. I think the last time I was here, it was like I was still working on it. So yeah, the journey is I have a published book, Son of a Basque, and this is a manuscript that I found that was written over 40 years ago. It's Son of a Basque is based on my grandfather's life. It's a historical fiction because he's no longer with us. He's on the book, but he's no longer with us. I rewrote a lot of it, and there were a lot of things that needed to be not changed, but kind of make it so everything matched. And a lot of editing had to take place, but the story is beautiful. It's a beautiful story, and the reviews. I'm going to send you all a copy signed, but the reviews are so good. And I was at the hair salon 2 days ago, and I'm at the shampoo bowl, and the girl's shampooing my hair. She goes, "I'm halfway through your book," and I said, "You are?" Because she's really young. And I said, "How old are you?" And she tells me her age. She's like 24, and she goes, "I love it. It's so fun." I go, "Wait a second. You love my book?" And she said, "Yeah. Oh my God, it's so good." I go, "You know what? That tells me everything," because I was really marketing to 45 and up, and mostly men, because it's kind of a guy's story. Yeah, it's a guy's
story.
Sure.
And she's like, "No, I love it." And so I thought, wow, I don't know if she's just trying to have a conversation with me, but either way, she said, she goes, "I want to get it for my brother." And I said, "I'll bring a copy for you next time I come in."
Mm-hmm. That's lovely.
Yeah.
That's
so
lovely.
I'm just saying, it's been beautiful because now people are, I've, had a lot of people have bought it, or I've given as gifts, and they've just come back to me and said, "Deborah, I read it in 2 days. It's such a beautiful story." So now I'm working on the screenplay. Who would have thought?
Are you really? No kidding. Oh, fantastic. I'm available to play the title character.
Well, you have a little Javier Bardem. Little Javier Bardem look. I think he would make the perfect main character for it.
I'm available to go to the movie, watch it, and eat popcorn.
That's me too.
Hey, you're talking about this program. Tell us where people can find out more about your work and the work you're doing for relationships.
Well, I'll tell you what. If anybody's listening to the show and something that I said resonates, they're like, "I need to do an emotional cleanse," I will give them 50% off just from this show. And so all they have to do is go to my website, which is my name. It's so easy, DeborahDriggs.com. Sign up for my personal letter and send me a note saying you heard me on this show, and I'll send them a link to get 50% off. And I will also send anybody that subscribes to my newsletter, if they're not interested in coaching, a signed copy of the book.
Lovely.
So, some fun holiday gifts. It's the holidays, and I know by the time this show airs, it'll be the new year. So guess what? Happy New Year gifts.
Perfect.
Outstanding. Well, this is, as always, Deb, it's great to see you. Thank you so much.
Thank you guys so much. Thank you.
Your latest work. You're delightful. And also, again, happy belated birthday.
Thank you. Thank you so much, guys.
Seth, are we done? Last looks. You got anything else you got any plugs? You got anything you want to?
I have no plugs, man. It's like the new year. I'm working away.
He's a lawyer.
Holidays
it's the holidays. What else do you want to plug?
Yeah, that's right. What else you got?
Lawyer holidays.
Okay, we're recording this show right before Christmas, basically. Yeah. It's airing just after the new year. And here's what's happening. I'm looking into the future, okay? Is I'm getting calls saying I'm never spending another holiday with my in-laws. That's what's going on in my life right now. Okay. So no, I got no plugs. I'm in my office early in the morning, staying late at night, working on the weekends. Haven't seen my fiance in days and weeks. So that's what's going on. But I appreciate you thinking about me, bud.
Oh, always thinking about you and thinking about all of you downloading and listening to this show. We sure appreciate your time and attention. If you have any questions, head over to howtosplitatoaster.com and you can tap the button that says, "Hey, I got a legal question. I want Seth to answer it." And it'll go into the queue and Seth will answer it on an upcoming show. Thank you, everybody. On behalf of the fantastic Deborah Driggs and Seth Seth Nelson, America's favorite divorce attorney. I'm Pete Wright. We'll catch you next week right here on How to Split a Toaster, a divorce podcast about saving your relationships.
Seth Nelson is an attorney with NLG Divorce and Family Law with offices in Tampa, Florida. While we may be discussing family law topics, How to Split a Toaster is not intended to, nor is it providing legal advice. Every situation is different. If you have specific questions regarding your situation, please seek your own legal counsel with an attorney licensed to practice law in your jurisdiction. Pete Wright is not an attorney or employee of NLG Divorce and Family Law. Seth Nelson is licensed to practice law in Florida.